How do most people end up losing money in a flip?
If you're very super early in the game and it's your first project, there's a very high chance. 5 things, if we have to drop it down, I like to make sure the roof is in good shape, the electrical and plumbing, the HVAC, all these mechanical has to be in great shape, and the foundation.
Can you flip with borrowed money? Hello. Welcome to another awesome real estate video. I'm Suha Cordy. I'm joined with my very special guest, Hafel. And today we're going to be talking everything flips in the Calgary real estate market. So let's flip right into it.
Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
All right.
So I have a question for you. How do most people end up losing money in a flip?
That's a great question, Suha. In fact, flips, as it sounds, a lot of people make a lot of money. But then if you're very super early in the game and it's your first project, there's a very high chance you're getting into a lot of unknowns. And what I've seen is, if you're not really working with a very sophisticated realtor or real estate agent or someone who's an expert in the flip market, there's a high chance you're overpaying, number one, for the property. And number two would be just in terms of renovation, if you can really budget and control your costs, there's a high chance you're going to go over budget. And a lot of people don't even talk about their stories where they lost a lot of money. So you got to be really careful.
So tell me, what are the top 5 things someone should look into before getting into a flip?
So when it gets to flips, there's a few things that you can look into. A lot of people, they either do a cosmetic flip or they do a completely structural remodeling. So what I would recommend, if you're early in the game and if you're trying to get into your first project or the first 5 project, stick to cosmetic ones. And then of 5 things, if we have to drop it down, it really comes down to, especially if you're doing cosmetic, I like to make sure the roof is in good shape, the electrical and plumbing, the HVAC, all these mechanical has to be in great shape, and the foundation. If there's any sort of crack in the foundation, whether it be horizontal or even vertical cracks, I would advise don't get into it if it's your first 5 flips.
Okay. So tell me, what's harder then, finding the right property or managing the property to make it the perfect flip?
Great question. So when it comes to finding, we can break it down this way. Like, you make the money on the buy. Mm-hmm. So sure, you can force appreciate the value by doing a lot of cosmetic changes to the property and the layout and everything like that. But really, it really comes down to, you gotta buy right. If you don't buy right, then you lose it all.
And how much, just give me a rule of thumb, should you be budgeting to do a renovation project?
So in terms of budgeting for a renovation project, it really depends, again, from community to community. So here in Calgary, we have, as you guys know, 4 quadrants. And all quadrants are equally good for flips, but every quadrant has their own different type of buyers and then different type of budget. So for a typical 1,000 square feet cosmetic renovation, when I say cosmetic, that would include paint, floor throughout. We refresh the kitchen cabinets, change the countertop, update the washroom. All of this stuff, if it's 1,000 square feet, you're looking at about 35,000. And then if you're updating the suite in the basement, let's say, a lot of people, what they do if it's 1,000 square feet home, they update the basement suite to increase the value of the property. That's another 50,000 right there.
Okay. So when we're talking about doing this, I want to know a little bit more about permits. Are they necessary? Do we always need them? What about if you're just doing some cosmetic fixing?
Great question. So when it comes to permitting, I hate working with the city. I'll just be honest with you, right? Because most times we're using private financing and you're paying 10% interest as holding cost. And so your time is everything. So really what it comes down to is you just making sure that the city permits are required in certain neighborhoods. For example, if you're doing anything in northeast of Calgary and it's a very small reno, you don't need no permits. But if you're going into a higher end community where your resale price is over 600 or over 800,000, close to $1 million, you definitely need those permits, because if someone's spending $1 million, they want to make sure everything is done right. There's no cutting corners in it.
Okay. And how do you analyze comps, or how do you get that price fixed for resale value?
Comps are very straightforward and easy. So, for example, like if you are, getting into a flip and you would have someone who's already done a flip working with you, or a real estate agent who is in that space, like Suha or myself, helping you out with those numbers. When it really comes down to comparables, I go for apples to apples. So if it's a buy level or a bungalow, I stick to buy levels or bungalows within that community, and then I really only go back about 90 days to 120 days. That's 3 to 4 months. So let's say a year ago a property sold for 800,000 in a community, and right now market is slow, as we know. It might not sell for 800. So I like to see what sold for a comparable property, similar size, a similar layout as well, and based on that I'll go from there. Because another thing is, a lot of people would think 2 stories, right? 2 stories will sell for 1 million, and it's 1,000 square feet. But a 1,000 square feet bungalow will sell for way more. So you really have to know the difference. But really, to break it down, just try to stick to the similar layout, similar size. But whether it's buy level, stick to a buy level kind of thing.
Okay. What about if there's a market shift mid flip? How do you protect yourself against that?
Very tough question. Very tough
It's a tough
question.
one. I know. I'm asking
So-
the tough ones today.
I know. So this one here is everyone's nightmare. So right now we are going through the election phase and everything. So, a lot of flippers, even myself, like we are a bit hesitant to get into the market because we just don't know how the market would shift. But again, it's very important. Like markets usually will show you some indication whether it's going up or down. So based on that, you just run your numbers a little bit conservative just to be on the safer side, and make sure if you're getting into like a larger remodel, like complete structure changes more than 3 4 months, just make sure you have enough profit margin, because these things can break your wallet basically, right? So you really have to be careful, and then the only way to mitigate is this, just to buy right, really.
And speaking of breaking your wallet, let's talk about finances a bit. Can you flip with borrowed money from a lender, private lender? Can you just tell me a little bit more about that process?
So I think this is also a very important question, because a lot of these people who watch these kind of YouTube videos about flips, or who wants to get into it, or who's going to seminars and everything, they really don't quite understand how people are actually financing these deals. So most times, I can talk about Alberta market. We have a few private lenders where you can use other people's money. So there's 2 things: either you can partner with some an investor who's got the capital and work with it, form a corporation. There's different ways, but more importantly, there's some programs out there. For example, with Calvert, it's a private lender, right? So private lender is like, you have the top 5 banks, and then you have the private lenders, which is a B or a C lender. And Calvert, for example, is specifically here in Alberta. They're across Canada, but they're specifically here in Alberta. They're very heavy. They can even fund a flip with you only putting a $10,000 down payment. Mind you, you need to have the capital for the renovation. So they have different programs. It's usually expensive, from 8% to 12% is what you're seeing, but this is how people finance most of their flips.
Okay. Well, that answered that question, but what about finding trustworthy contractors? What are the red flags to look out for when you're trying to get tradesmen in?
So early on, when I started flipping, I can personally answer this question, because I've run into issues where I was just trying to find out, because I was new to Calgary, and then I was just reaching out to a lot of builders, a lot of these companies out of Google and Facebook, and obviously interviewing them. But there's only so much that I can do in terms of research and whatnot. So it has been a trial and error for me. But if I was to redo it all again, what I would do is I would really work with someone who's done a few flips, and go for coffee with them or something, and I will try to JV with them a little bit, and then so that you're not getting into mistakes, because there's huge demand for these tradespeople, and they charge you hand over fist, and then if you haven't ever worked with them, you are probably going to spend more money than needed. For example, the first flip that I did, I spent like $45,000 just on a pure cosmetic reno. Right after the flip, I found out I could have done that for like under 30,000. Just FYI, right? So.
Yeah, so that's why it's so important to know that before getting into it.
Correct.
So where is the best place to flip in Calgary? Are we talking acreages, inner city, or suburbia? Could you tell us what would be the most profitable place to actually flip?
The place with the most margins, it really depends on the market. So right now we are in a market where everything is slow. All the businesses are slow. Even though interest rates have come down, there's a lot of uncertainty in the market now. Just the elections got done, Trump tariff situation and all that. So we got to be really particular on what kind of market or niche we are getting into right now. Because if you like being a realtor, right? If I ask you the same question, we all know that anything in that million range is very hard to sell right now. So you just stay away from any properties where your resale is at a million. But as we know, it's very hot for properties under that $650,000 market
Yeah.
price range because it's very affordable and there's a lot of first-time home buyers. So what I would personally do is like stick to properties because again, like I'm talking more so of not a savvy investor, but if you're getting into the game, I would stick to properties where your end result or end value of the product is under 700,000 or around 650,000 because those kind of properties move regardless of what the market is doing, and then you're not holding the property for 2 to 3 months, which I've seen a lot of people who are holding their new bills and $1 million properties.
Yeah.
So but on the other hand, if the market really picks up, you could go ahead and do $1 million flip.
Yeah. Well, that's a very good thing to know. Is there any way we can avoid over renovating in certain neighborhoods? Some people spend so much on the finishes, they upgrade all the builder grades. What's your advice with that?
Some people like to shoot for the moon, so to speak, and then there's a high chance you can get lucky, but there's also a very high chance that you can lose a lot of money. And the way that I see it is like usually when I buy a flip or a property that potential property you will look at, drive by the street, get a feel for it. Just make sure you're not the first or the nicest property, which is going to be after your renovation. So as long as there's like 2, 3, or some nice properties on that street, and then you just have to match it. Never overdo it, especially on a regular market. If the market is not trending upwards, never overdo it. Just try to stick to the basics. Try to stay within your budget. And then, like, there's so many things that you can do to make the property nicer. But for us as an investor, we got to really see to make sure we only putting just enough to make the most amount of profit. Did I answer your question?
That answered my question. Thank
Okay.
you. I want to talk about staging. Having done a lot of flips in inner city myself, what's your opinion with staging? What does it cost, and is it overall beneficial?
So staging, it's also an additional cost that you have to budget initially when you're flipping. And then what I would say is like it really comes down to the area again. Now, if you're in a very nice area and also if the layout is kind of crooked where you feel like a person who's walking into the property would have a hard time imagining how they can lay it out with their furniture. In those kind of scenarios, I would actually stage properties. There's been situations where, a property that we are flipping is only like 600,000. Typically, we don't stage that. Like, it would sell very fast. But then the layout was very tricky that even for us, we were like, how do we fit in a dining table and a big couch? So we staged it in a way that the people who's walking in, you're just doing the work for them. And then also the other thing to really consider is like properties, if it's done nice, like it will sell within the first month. And then so make sure when you have staging, just have enough pictures. So in case if you're staying on the market for longer, you can even remove the staging and have those pictures in. And that way you're not bleeding more capital.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that one. Now, what's your advice for someone who's looking to flip a home once a year versus starting a flipping business?
Flipping once a home, a lot of people that we work with, as you know, like they flip maybe 1 or 2, and it's just a side gig for them. And then most people that we see who are using just one project at a time and then who's working a full time is people actually taking advantage of like a home equity line of credit or something, and then they have more capital so that their holding cost is not as much, so they take it slow kind of thing. However, and it's something that you can really do, but you got to enjoy it. Like managing these tradespeople are never easy. So if it has to be really worthwhile, you probably have to do multiple projects at the same time. And then it can never be just a part-time or you have to have like a boots on the ground, a partner who can go onto the site every day. Only then you can actually start a business along those lines. And then in this market right now, it's very tough to find a property. So rather than just doing more volume, I would actually stick to 1 or 2 and just make the most amount of money from there.
Okay. Since I know you've done flips before in the past, and we've had those conversations, could you walk us through all your successful strategies?
Um, there, like it really comes down to, as I said, like buying right. I've out of all the flips that we've done, we've lost money. We can, dig more into it in another video. And then, like, what in my understanding right now, like every time I'm buying a property with my previous and past experience, we always make sure we're getting a good price. And then, as I said earlier, the five things, the foundation, electrical, plumbing, and roof. These are stuff that you just don't want to spend any money on. Just make sure all these are taken care of, and then strictly stick to cosmetic renovations. That's the game plan.
I think that's honestly such sound advice for anyone who's ever had the idea of being interested in flipping or want to know the process. You've really thoroughly guided us through it. I feel like I've actually gained something from doing this interview with you. So thank you,
Amazing.
Haffel. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it was awesome. Thank you
Sweet,
so much for your
sweet.
time. I
Okay,
really
yes.
appreciate it.
So, and then the other thing is Calgary market, as you know, has been on the rise for such a long time, and then for that and still affordable compared to the other metropolitan cities like Toronto and Vancouver, and a lot more investors are coming here and investing in like rentals and flips and everything.
Yes.
So if you guys are getting into the market for flips, new builds expert is Suha right there. She can find you lots.
We have lots
works
of
with a lot of
lots
builders.
in Calgary.
She works with a lot of builders and flips. I work with a lot of off-market wholesalers, etc. So if you guys are looking for your next project, whether it be flipped or build, you know who to reach out to.
We're
Sweet.
looking forward to your phone calls.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
guys. We'll see you on the next one.